Hey guys, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Srtty, a 2227 LPD peak top laner who played in the LCS for Dignitas and Lion in 2025. I'm currently considered to be the best Rumble player in solo queue and rank 1 on him in 1xGG, playing him at over 1500 LP with a lot of success versus streamers and pros alike. In this guide, I'll go over what I believe to be Rumble's best runes, summoners, builds, items, combos, how to properly manage his unique heat mechanic, early/mid game identity, and the general idea behind how you want to approach matchups and the early levels. Rumble is a pseudo-range character who relies heavily on spacing and heat management to control the location of minion waves and put enemies in difficult situations. He's a great teamfighter, extremely strong laner, and a true jack of all trades in his current state. His only weakness is a lack of mobility, which can make him flash reliant in the early game while trying to maintain safety against strong all-in junglers. As for the champions he enjoys playing versus, Rumble loves to specifically play into melee characters who have to run into him through his equalizer. Think Jax, Zehen, Mundo. With that said, he also has tools to deal with range characters due to an extremely long ult range, so champions like Jace, Xerath, and Lux are also not a problem. Arguably, the most important part of Rumble's game is his level 1. How you play your level 1 on the champion and the conditions you're in with your heat and HP upon hitting level 3 often determines your entire early lane phase. For Rumble in the early game, there are 4 gameplay patterns which apply to all different scenarios and will help you win different kinds of matchups. Firstly, double moat heat stack. This is done when you want to start E but are also willing to greed for the double adaptive minor shards. When you do this, you have to start 2 glowing moats in base and stack your heat up in intervals of 10. Think 1 E equals 20, you'd let it drop 10 back to 10, then cast E so now you have 30, let it drop another 10 to 20, then you cast E, now you have 40, and you continue doing this until slightly after the minion spawn, before swapping your items back to Doran's Ring and running back to lane while continuing to spam your E off cooldown. What this does is it gives you a stronger level 3 all-in due to the adaptive shards at the expense of allowing you to do things level 1. You can't mark your spot in the jungle. And you also have slightly worse CSing because you cannot choose when you cast your E if you want to maintain heat. This is why I personally do not recommend this, as I value the ability to get 12 out of 12 CS in the early game, above slightly more damage as the game goes on. The second route in early game is haste shard heat stacking. This is the alternative to double moat, which I prefer. With this strategy, you take the minor CDR shard as opposed to the adaptive shard. It lets you stack your heat again in intervals of 10 like before, but you end up with more total heat level 1 and more E uptime at the expense of a small damage reduction in the early lane due to not having the adaptive force. This setup is best ran in the champions you intend to give priority to in the first 3 waves, as it allows you to get perfect CS and hit your level 3 spike at 80 to 100 heat and full HP with 2 health pots. From that point forward, you win almost every matchup in the game if you're running Flash Ignite. The third route is double adaptive Q start. This is done into low mobility melee characters who you think you can bully early. The only real example of this in my mind is a Gwen who starts Q. She doesn't have a good way to interact with you early and take off your HP, so you can start Q just to poke her bit by bit. It accelerates your kill angles in the early lane, but it can also be very risky, so I recommend not taking this route unless you know what you're doing. And finally, W level 2. This is done into lane bullies like Akshan, Ryze, Aurora, etc., where your only goal is to be high HP verse by the time you hit level 3. You can do this with either of the 2 E starting routes, and this is only good versus champions your goal is to survive early versus, as it allows for a better all-in angle at level 3 to 4 with your Ignite due to having higher HP. Heat management. Rumble's unique core mechanic, which establishes his place as a specialist champion, is his heat. Heat management on Rumble is extremely important and is largely what defines a good and bad Rumble. Heat is gained through casting an ability. Each ability, excluding Rumble's ultimate, gives him 20 heat, and upon reaching 50 heat, each ability, again excluding his ultimate, becomes empowered. This is called entering the danger zone. Upon entering the danger zone, your Q, W, and E become enhanced, gaining unique effects. For your Q, it simply does 50% more damage. For your W, you gain a 50% larger shield and a 50% increase to the movement speed gained from the W, and no other sources. And for your E, you gain a 50% increase to the damage, MR, shred, and slow. There is a caveat to this though. Upon reaching 150 heat, your character will go into overheat. When overheated, Rumble has empowered basic attacks with % max HP damage that scales off AP, and he gets a giant attack speed boost. But it also happens to lock you out of casting any more abilities until the heat bar is decayed back to 0, with the exception of his E, where if you use it right before overheating, you can cast a second E during overheat. Overheating then places Rumble back into his most vulnerable state. A good Rumble will consistently manage his heat to be around 7 to 80 because of this. This range is a sweet spot as it gives you access to an immediate overheat if you use all your abilities, but also gives you the most leniency in case you have to use abilities but don't want to become overheated. These are obviously huge changes, and are why it's so important to properly manage your heat to stay within the danger zone and within overheating range if so desired. Due to all of this, a core principle in Rumble is, if you have the intention of contesting an enemy character on the next wave, do not overheat or you will be too weak to do so. Runes. Rumble is a character with a few different rune options for different situations. The standard page is Comet, Nubis Cloak, Transcendence, or Absolute Focus depending on your preference, and Scorch with secondaries of either Resolve or Inspiration. In the Resolve tree, your secondaries are typically Second Wind vs Poke, Bone Plating vs All In, and Overgrowth if your matchup is easy or has no CC. And Unflinching into harder early game matchups who can CC you so you can get access to the extra 10 armor and MR in lane. It's important to note that these resists apply before the damage of the CCing ability as well. In Inspiration, you can take any combination of Cashback, Triple Tonic, and Cosmic Insight depending on your preference. I personally have been loving Triple Tonic Cosmic Insight, as with the Season 16 changes to Teleport, I began opting into Ignite much more, and the lower cooldown feels quite nice. The second page is Conqueror with Triumph or Absorb Life, Legend Haste, and Cut Down with the same secondaries as the Comet page. This is taken into the super beefy characters like Ornn and Scion if you want more power in the 1v1 as the game goes on. The third page is First Strike with Cashback, Triple Tonic, and Cosmic Insight. This also has the same secondary of Resolve, but you also now have the option of being extra greedy and going Haste plus Cut Down in Precision secondary. You only want to take this page into characters who you know you won't have trouble with in lane. And the final page is Phase Rush. This is taken with the same minor moves as the Comet page, but is used to counteract champs who are heavily reliant on slows. Think Gwen, Nasus, Olaf. It allows you to kite them and avoid extended fights very easily. For Rumble's minor shards, my standard page is Haste, Adaptive, and Flat HP. You can change this depending on the early game route you want to opt into, whether it be Glowing Moat heat stacking, Haste, Shard heat stacking, Double Adaptive Q start, etc. For summoner spells, I'm taking Flash Ignite every game into non-tank matchups, and Flash TP vs tanks. This is because versus tanks, the Ignite kill pressure doesn't have that much value, and being able to push in the tank and TP bottom mid to make plays holds higher return in my eyes. I don't believe other summoner options are viable outside of Flash Exhaust into very specific matchups such as Riven if you are afraid of their burst, but in my eyes Ignite works perfectly fine here, and so I reduce variance by just going that instead. I place such a high emphasis on Flash due to Rumble's E-Flash mechanic, and the fact that Rumble has very low mobility which Flash allows him to make up for. The number of games I've won by flashing onto enemy carries in a teamfight is unreal. Rumble has two viable first item rushes: Hextech Protobelt and Liandry's. Protobelt is taken into low HP ranged matchups where you gain benefits from the Hextech Alternator build path and struggle to kill the enemies without the dash active. Examples of this are Vayne, Quinn, and Teemo. Liandry's on the other hand is your jack of all trades rush versus everything else. Faded Ashes is an amazing component for Rumble, and Liandry's gives you everything you want. It's important to note that if you base with 1300 gold, you should not buy Haunting Guise and instead get Faded Ashes and Ruby Crystal, as it gives much more damage and relatively similar durability for the same cost. After you build this, you either go Bloodletter's Curse or Shadow Flame depending on your team's composition. Bloodletter's is good when you have other AP sources on your team as it applies Magic Pen to the enemies, and Shadow Flame is best when solo AP as it gives the most damage possible. I always follow either Bloodletter's or Shadow Flame with Zhonya's third. Rumble has low mobility, and the active of Zhonya's allows you to dive deep in fights or create space without dying instantly. After Zhonya's, your options are typically either Rabadon's Death Cap or Void Staff depending on if you built Bloodletter's earlier, as you cannot buy two Magic Pen items. So Void and Bloodletter's you can't buy together, or Bloodletter's and Crypt Bloom you can't buy together. The build from here on is situational. Do you need more damage, armor, magic resist, etc.? You have many options like Kanik Rukun, Jack Show, Banshees, just depending on what you want. The full build typically looks like Liandry's, into Boots, into Shadow Flame, into Zhonya, Rabadon's, and Void Staff. Rumble approaches skirmishes by poking with his E and controlling zones around choke points. He has great AoE, so if an enemy team is walking through a choke, it's very easy to drop your ult on their heads and rack up thousands of damage instantly. You want to look for times when a mobile carry has positioned themselves next to walls and line your ultimate up with the wall in order to maximize your damage by removing the areas they can walk to. This is key to maximizing your control and damage output. You can start fights with your ult, but realistically, you want to act as a secondary engage and lay your ultimate over the CC of a teammate. If you're looking for a ban as Rumble, I recommend one of Kennen, Riven, or Galio, as these lanes are very difficult to snowball into if the enemy knows what they're doing.